And the difference when you're talking about the size of staff in a legislator's office and then their central staffs was very big differences between the House and the Senate. The Senate, you had more staff in your individual offices, and then you sort of used a central staff, and in the House it was very different from that because the legislative offices as a whole, on the average, were small. But what I've seen in the last, probably the last 6 to 8 years, is that, especially in the House, and I'll speak specifically to the Democratic caucus, is that in the House, staff members in individual legislative offices are told to be afraid of the press, to never have any dealings with the press. Not just that the quote should come from your boss, but that I can remember when Hugh McDermott would call my office about, my boss's office about something, and knowing what I couldn't say, or what I was comfortable in saying to Hugh or Charlie or George, or whomever might have called our office, I happen to think that that's a mistake. And one of the advantages of having worked for Aldo Vagnozzi, as you all know, a former member of the press corps and a former newspaper man, was that Aldo insisted on being approachable, and he really had dragged down fights with Democratic leadership in the House about the fact that he refused to follow that gag rule as a member, and that he really spoke very strongly about that in caucus meetings. And I happen to think that it makes your jobs harder, that staff are now being told to be afraid.
I think it goes back farther than that, because I lost a raise in '92 for having a quote in the paper.
Mm-hmm. Really? Yeah. Yeah, it's and it isn't just the control of the message. It's that you all are bad. The press is bad. And so we shouldn't have any contact, and I don't work for the legislature any longer, but that we should, as staff, we should not, and our bosses should not have any contact with the press. So that's the way you control your message, is not to have any contact.
I think it goes more, though, to the relationships. I have no trouble getting to legislators, and I don't cover the Capitol. I'm calling them on the phone, basically. I've been in the Capitol, I think, once in the last 10 years. And that was for an event where Krim was being honored, and it felt weird being on the House floor. In fact, I think they almost frisked me before I got out there.
Is it harder? I mean, does it make your jobs harder for those of you who are still actively covering the legislature? Does it make it harder knowing that that message comes from caucus leadership, that members, much less staffers, are not supposed to be talking to the press?
Well, it's not necessarily that way, though. I have no trouble getting a hold of legislators still, with one exception in the area, and those are the people I'm concerned about. Those are the people I work with, and there's one exception who won't talk with me, who's a lame duck anyway, and shall we say is a little bit more conservative than I am, like a whole lot. And without naming any names, but he's from DeWitt and he's a state senator. But I can still call these people at home. I got their home numbers, their cell phone numbers, their wife's or husband's cell phone numbers, etc. They're still accessible, but it's still a matter of having relationships. Because I've got relationships with all of them, but it takes time to establish those. And I think that's where, again, the distrust is, because they're new. They don't know that whether or not they can trust Charlie, or whether they can trust Joanne or anybody else, or they can trust Larry, because they just don't know who they are, other than they may have seen bylines.
With that, thank you one and all for coming. Let's give our panel a round of applause. Thank you very much.